Hi, welcome back. This is episode 3 of MythoPsychoa. Today I'm not going to be talking about someone from mythology, but rather someone from old literature, so close enough. Ophelia. She's known as a tragic character from Shakespeare's play Hamlet, with an untimely demise. Her character represents the struggles faced by women in a patriarchal society, notably during the Elizabethan era, but very relevant today. In the play, Ophelia is introduced as the daughter of Polonius, the sister of Laertes, and as the romantic interest of Prince Hamlet. Her role is primarily defined by her relationships with these men, highlighting the limited agency afforded to women of her time. From the jump, Ophelia is subject to the whims and commands of the men in her life, with both her father and brother warning her against trusting Hamlet's affections, at least in the beginning. As the play progresses, Ophelia's tragic story unfolds. She obediently follows her father's instructions to reject Hamlet's advances, which inadvertently triggers Hamlet's descent into apparent madness. The subsequent death of her father at Hamlet's hands, coupled with Hamlet's cruel treatment, pushes Ophelia into a spiral of her own grief and madness. And Shakespeare's portrayal of Ophelia's descent is particularly noteworthy. It manifests through fragmented speech and the singing of bawdy songs, which stands in stark contrast to her previous demure demeanor. The transformation symbolizes the breakdown of societal constraints that had previously bound her, allowing her to express thoughts and emotions that were previously suppressed. The circumstances of Ophelia's death are a little ambiguous and have been the subject of much interpretation. Her mother, Queen Gertrude, reports that Ophelia drowned while attempting to hang flower garlands on a willow tree. The description of her death, with Ophelia singing old tunes as she sank into the water, has been interpreted by some as a form of passive suicide, a final act of agency in a life controlled by others. Over time, interpretations of Ophelia's character have evolved. While earlier views often portrayed her as a symbol of feminine frailty and madness, more recent analyses have focused on her as a victim of societal oppression and patriarchal control. Some interpretations even suggest that her madness and death represent a form of rebellion against these constraints. In conclusion, Ophelia's character in Hamlet serves as a powerful exploration of gender roles, mental health, and the consequences of societal oppression. Cycling into archetypes and psychology, Ophelia is one of Shakespeare's most enigmatic characters in Hamlet. Her tragic fate and complex persona make her an ideal subject for exploring these concepts. I will be examining her character through the lens of Jungian archetypes and a few psychological ideas, shedding light on her symbolic significance and enduring spirit. To begin, Ophelia and the anima archetype. In Jungian psychology, the anima represents the feminine aspects of a man's psyche. Ophelia embodies the anima archetype in relation to Hamlet's character. As Hamlet's love interest, she reflects his inner feminine qualities and serves as a projection of his own repressed emotions. Her innocence and vulnerability contrast sharply with Hamlet's brooding nature, creating a dynamic interplay between masculine and feminine energies within the play. Ophelia's role as an anima figure is further emphasized by her connection to nature and flowers. Throughout the play, she's associated with gardens and floral imagery, symbolizing fertility, beauty, and the cyclical nature of life. This natural symbolism aligns with Jung's concept of the anima as a bridge between consciousness and the unconscious, much like how nature connects the physical and spiritual realms. The maiden archetype and innocence lost. Ophelia also embodies the maiden archetype, or shadow maiden, representing youthful innocence and purity. Her character arc traces the painful transition from innocence to experience, mirroring the psychological process of individuation, which is the process of becoming a distinct, separate person with a unique identity, belief system, and ideals. As external forces and societal expectations bear down on her, Ophelia's struggle to maintain her innocence becomes a central theme of her character development. The destruction of Ophelia's innocence is closely tied to her relationships with the men in her life, her father Polonius, her brother Laertes, and Hamlet himself. Their attempts to control and manipulate her ultimately contribute to her psychological breakdown, illustrating the devastating effects of patriarchal oppression on the feminine psyche. Ophelia's madness, a psychological perspective. Her descent into madness has sparked a lot of fascination for psychologists. From a psychological standpoint, her mental breakdown can be interpreted through various lenses. 1. Trauma and dissociation. The sudden loss of her father, coupled with Hamlet's rejection, may have triggered a dissociative response in Ophelia. Her fragmented speech and erratic behavior in her mad scenes could be seen as symptoms of acute trauma and dissociation. Repression. Ophelia's so-called madness might be viewed as a sort of mental break from societal constraints. Her provocative songs and distribution of flowers during her mad scenes could represent a release of long-suppressed emotions and desires, and an end to her willingness to be subjugated by the perceived powers around her. Existential crisis. From an existential perspective, Ophelia's madness can be interpreted as a response to the absurdity and meaninglessness of her situation. Stripped of agency and unable to reconcile her inner world with external expectations, she retreats into a state of madness as a form of existential rebellion. The Drowning Woman, Death and Rebirth. Ophelia's death by drowning is rich with symbolic meaning and psychological implications. The image of the drowning woman has become an archetype in itself, representing both destruction and potential rebirth. In psychological terms, water often symbolizes the unconscious, and Ophelia's submersion can be seen as a return to the primordial state of the psyche. The description of Ophelia's death, with her garments spreading wide and momentarily keeping her afloat, mermaid-like, evokes the liminal state between life and death. This imagery aligns with the concept of psychological transformation, where the dissolution of the old self precedes the emergence of a new identity. Psychological projections of Ophelia in art and culture. The enduring fascination with Ophelia extends beyond literature into visual arts and popular culture. Her character has been reinterpreted countless times, each iteration reflecting the psychological preoccupations of its era. The pre-Raphaelite paintings of Ophelia, for instance, often emphasize her ethereal beauty and connection to nature, tapping into the Victorian fascination with the intersection of beauty, madness, and death. In more recent interpretations, Ophelia has been reimagined as a symbol of female empowerment and resistance against patriarchal oppression. This shift reflects changing societal attitudes and a growing awareness of the psychological impact of gender roles and expectations. In conclusion, Ophelia's character serves as a powerful vehicle for exploring various psychological ideas and archetypes. From her embodiment of the anima and maiden archetypes to her tragic descent into madness, Ophelia continues to captivate audiences and scholars alike. Her story resonates with universal themes of innocence lost, the struggle for identity, and the complex interplay between individual psyche and societal expectations. As our understanding of psychology evolves, so too does our interpretation of Ophelia. She remains a mirror reflecting our collective psyche, inviting us to explore the depths of human experience and the enduring power of archetypes in shaping our understanding of the world. With this episode, I want to end trying something new in order to offer an avenue of more reflection. So I have created 3 shadow work questions. If you're interested, you could either just do them on your own or maybe do a journal entry about them. Question number 1 is, reflect on a time when you felt powerless or controlled by others' expectations. How did this experience shape your sense of self? What parts of yourself did you suppress to meet those expectations? Number 2. Imagine you are Ophelia, about to distribute flowers in your mad scene. What hidden truths or repressed emotions would you express through each flower you hand out? What have you been holding back? And number 3. Consider a situation where you felt torn between duty and desire. How did you navigate this conflict? What aspects of yourself emerged or were silenced in the process? How might embracing your madness or true feelings have changed the outcome? And that concludes this episode. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Rowan Blythe, and if you're interested in seeing any of my artwork, either on TikTok or Instagram, I am at Rowan Blythe 333.